All right. It is Friday, December 19th, 2025. I am decked out in Christmas finery, my ugliest Christmas sweater, because it's the Christmas show or the holiday show. I don't know. You want to be inclusive, I guess. The holiday show of the Weekly Roundup, Prospect Weekly Roundup. And I have to start by telling you this is the last Prospect Weekly Roundup. We did this experiment for a couple years. I thought it was, a lot of fun. We had a lot of great discussions. But we're going to do some other things with respect to video that you will see in the new year. The YouTube channel that you're on right now, we will still be adding things to it. We just won't be doing a weekly video show, but we want to wrap this up because obviously we're at the end of the year. We may do more events on this, as we go along. If you're signed up for the channel, stay on. We're gonna have a lot for you next year. But I decided, since this was the year-end show, that we'd bring on as many of our team as was available and talk with them about 2025 and the years ahead. So we have, and I will run it down. It's staff writer Whitney Wimbish is here. We have writing fellows James Barata and Emma Jansen with us, along with senior editor Ryan Cooper and editor at large Harold Meyerson. So, hello to all. Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Hi.
Hello, everyone.
That
So,
that's a swell outfit you have on, David.
it's the holiday show. I got my ugliest Christmas sweater possible here for
There
you.
you go.
So this is one of those things where you actually make the pattern yourself. You're just given the sweater and then you have all these cutouts and you make the pattern
Ooh.
yourself. So
Huh.
Well, you
I
did a
try to
good
be
one.
symmetrical with the reindeer.
You could make a menorah and burn that sweater. That might not be such
Well,
a
that would be the ugly Hanukkah sweater, which
yeah,
I don't see
yes.
you holding right now. So
No, no, no.
Ooh.
uh, anyway,
Uh-oh.
all right, let's get on to where we're going with the show in the next hour. Obviously, the year was dominated by the return of the Trump administration and all of the madness that has set off. I wonder if maybe we'll just go around and get people's sort of main takeaway from the year from their perspective. We'll start with Ryan Cooper.
Sure. Well, for me, it seemed that this year has been, Trump attempting to consolidate a fascist dictatorship, or some kind of Hungary style authoritarian regime to topple America's democratic institutions. And I think he's gone about it in about the most ham-fisted and idiotic way that you could imagine. Not how the old pros would have done it in the past, like Vladimir Putin. Um, he was tearing up America's state capacity, the kind of thing that you need to, control the population. Did a huge cut of healthcare in the big beautiful bill, and he's messed up the economy with these tariffs. Not as bad as I thought it was, going to turn out, but still quite bad. Inflation is up, jobs are down, things look very much worse than they did a couple of years ago. And so normally you'd think that wouldn't work, and it's sort of been a race between Trump's incompetence on one hand and the absolute eagerness of elite institutions to capitulate to Trump, without even being pushed really. Universities, business, there's just been this, massive movement to give in, even, if not capitulate, then just actively conspiring with him. And I don't think we have a sort of concrete demonstration of where that is, but it does seem like momentum has kind of stalled out in terms of consolidation. And I think that is overwhelmingly because of grassroots resistance. Um, You have all these absolutely bumbling court cases happening, the Trumpers trying to prosecute people, and grand juries no billing the people who are trying to be charged for completely nonsense crimes. Your classic authoritarian thing, locking people up for criticizing their regime, and ordinary citizens. I mean, this is the cliche, of course, in legal reporting is that any prosecutor can get a grand jury to indict a ham sandwich. And yet, in fact, the sandwich guy got off in his legal proceedings. The one who threw a sandwich at the ICE officer. That one actually went to trial, as I
It was
recall.
turkey. It wasn't ham. So, I mean,
And
you can
wasn't it
indict a
National
ham
Guard instead of
sandwich
ICE?
easily. A turkey sandwich, not so much.
Well,
Yeah.
but you alluded to the ham-fisted, efforts of the Trump administration. So there's plenty of ham already in your assessment.
Well, look, I wrote a much maligned, although, also much read piece on February, I think it was February 21st of this year. And the headline of it was "The coup has failed."
Mm.
And a lot of people really hated me for writing that and continued to every time Trump did something really bad, I would hear, "Hey, aren't you the guy who said the coup failed?" And it set up the exact dynamic that you were talking about, Ryan. That The reason that I was confident in that assertion was that we saw enough grassroots resistance and lack of capitulation that we would see um, real pushback. And I have to say, I think it's aged pretty well. I think that's where we're at right now in December of 2025. And that doesn't mean that there's not pain that we're all going to experience for the next 3 years. And it doesn't mean that it's preordained either. It doesn't mean that Democrats, as the opposition party, can just coast and not act like an opposition party. But it does mean that the necessary kind of conditions for a fundamental shift into direct authoritarianism, you might say we're in a competitive authoritarianism mode, put the political science hat on right now, the necessary conditions are not present. And that is that goes hand in hand with the revulsion of the public to the things that are going on. So I'm going to turn it over to Whitney right now to get her
David, before you
impressions.
turn it over to me, can you talk a little bit more about what would need to be present? Like when would we really need to, start becoming even more fearful?
Well, I mean, first of all, that piece was not written as sort of a sigh of relief. Like we should be very fearful of everything that's going on right now and fight it with everything we got. But I don't think that I think that enough Americans have heeded that and have acted in that fashion. Um, that we're seeing that pop up in little and big ways, not just millions of people turning out to protest and really brave people putting their lives on the line to stop a paramilitary kind of Stasi force kidnapped and abduct people. But also, we're seeing it in elections where the average swing is something like 13 to 15 points away from where Trump was in 2024. So I think maybe it's a I know it when I'll see it kind of situation, but none of those things are consistent with an inexorable slide into whatever Trump wants to slide us into. So go ahead.
I really like what you just said about it not being inevitable. The outcome is not preordained. We are not destined to be a fascist nation, and there's still things that we can do to fight back. In New York City, the overwhelming um, feeling is that, or expectation is that we're going to start to see a really steep uptick in ICE activity starting on the first day of Mayor Mamdani's tenure. And there are trainings all over the city, groups being formed all over the city to plan for and get everybody trained to resist. There's a really specific protocol of what these trainings are telling folks that we need to know how to do if we ever encounter people being stopped on the street. Um, and one of the things that these trainings really emphasize is that if you see someone being deported after you have chronicled all of the information that you can, sending it into the main aid organizations, the main leaders of these resistance movements, the goal then is to buy time and just divert attention to yourself. And that can be done in different ways, depending on what your comfort level is with risk, what you're willing to take on as a risk. But just diverting attention from whoever these the American Gestapo is trying to snatch to yourself, buying that time so more people can show up and, really create a situation that hopefully forces these guys to leave. Um, that's kind of where I'm drawing a lot
Hmm.
of hope. And I know, Emma, not to put you on the spot, but you have been watching some of this go down. And Chicago is a
Yeah.
spot where, at the trainings that I've gone to here in New York, there's been a lot of reference back to what has worked in Chicago. And so I was hoping that you could maybe talk about some of the things that you have seen so far that the rest of us should kind of fold into our thinking.
Yeah, no, definitely. As you were talking, I was like, yeah, that sounds like an exact kind of that's the playbook that, activists here in Chicago have had to follow as well. Um, and, there's kind of been a sigh of relief here in Chicago, but we had Bovino, who is the kind of notorious Customs and Border Patrol agent, return to Chicago earlier this week. So it's definitely not over here. But yeah, I think when earlier this summer and fall, when it was kind of the height of ICE's and Border Patrol's presence in Chicago, you just saw a really overwhelming and wide-ranging grassroots resistance, to kind of use what you've been saying, David. It was like not just really well-trained people who have been in activist spaces their whole lives. It was also like wealthy white moms in some of the city's most expensive neighborhoods, which I think was really heartening to see. It activated a lot of people in the city. And I hope that, wherever ICE goes next, if it will likely be New York, you'll also see those kinds of like really broad coalitions working against them. And yeah, I think when I look back on 2025, being in Chicago, the effects of ICE's presence here is probably what sticks out the most to me. It was just very overwhelming, even if ICE was not specifically in your neighborhood. And for example, the neighborhood I was in, ICE was spotted only 2 or 3 times, so very little in comparison to some other parts of the city. But there was just this sense of kind of fear and discomfort all over the city. We had the massive raid on an apartment building just very not far south of me in South Shore, which was pretty horrifying. And we're still kind of unpacking the consequences of that and where people are now. Yeah, so that is a major part of 2025 for me. I also just wanted to note before I pass the baton, um, I think when I look back at this year, I'm remembering, right in January when Trump was inaugurated, we did a little series where all of us picked up some executive orders and just ran through,
Hmm.
and did like super quick recaps of all of these executive orders, not all of them, but a really good chunk of some of the most important ones. And it's those sorts of projects that we've been taking on this year that have felt really most impactful and meaningful to me because there's just so much coming out of the federal government and out of the White House right now, whether it's an executive order, this is my cat, or whether it be, a change to SNAP or Medicaid. And chronicling those has been really helpful this
Yeah,
year. I hope we can do more of it next year.
I I totally agree with you. That time was just so crazy. I think we
Yeah.
went over 40 executive orders in the space of 5 days.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And and there was all kinds of other stuff going on from worker purges to what
Yep.
Doge was working on. And it was really great to be able to, at a really quick strike kind of level, try to
Yeah.
chronicle all that. And it was really important. James, you have any thoughts?
When I started at the Prospect in April of this year, I think as we saw sort of the implementation by various federal agencies of those executive orders, for example, looking at the Federal Railroad Administration and the Department of Transportation more generally, putting out that sort of rulemaking effort to basically deregulate as much as feasibly possible. And I would just say that in addition to sort of really focusing in on what that meant for employees of different federal agencies, such as, obviously, FRA, but, shifting more to worker impacts from those massive purges, looking at the Environmental Protection Administration, really fast moving, really news and impacts just around retaliation against workers there, and the sort of same union that represents other federal workers, suing the Trump administration specifically over those efforts. But I would also say in terms of the consolidation of executive power, there's also just been, as David, you yourself have really spent much of the year reporting on, which is consolidation more generally in um, really everything from the rail industry now is what we're seeing with Norfolk Southern and Union Pacific, but also the Warner Bros. Netflix merger that is sort of pending currently. Um, I would just say that really coming together with sort of the overall impacts we've seen, especially with respect to essentially taking money away from programs that benefit working class and low income individuals who are in need, putting that into immigration enforcement and really expanding the surveillance apparatus that has been deployed at the border in the borderlands for some time now, and really accelerating that with this new influx of money into the sort of mainland interior of the United States. Um, and yeah, I just think those were some of the
Hmm.
most glaring things that I think came out of the year.
Great. Harold, I'm curious as to where you see it.
Well, first, just as a note to what Whitney was saying about New York, there's a transition coming up in addition to Eric Adams to Zohran Mamdani, and that is Cardinal Dolan to the guy who Pope Leo appointed as the Archbishop of New York today, a guy named Hicks, who comes from somewhere in Pope Leo's home state of Illinois. And I raise that because the one issue on which the church has been unavoidably good has been the rights of immigrants. Dolan was really always close to the conservative power structure in the United States, as is a tradition in the New York Archdiocese. Um, it's quite possible that, the new New York Archbishop might array the church against ICE and the Border Patrol and whatnot. So that's certainly worth following. And it wouldn't hurt, in addition to all the volunteers you, I'm sure, correctly predicted will be out there when Trump sends in his goons, that, you may get some priests, and that will help.
Well, you
I
certainly did in LA
Yeah,
when
And
I,
Chicago.
and
yeah.
I was out also on the front lines of some of this stuff in downtown, and religious leaders led most of the major rallies and
Yeah.
sit-ins and things like that.
Yeah, outside of the detention facility here in Chicago, I think probably the most consistent group of activists were a Christian group, and they prayed there, I think, every day at certain times.
It's the same in New York outside 26 Federal Plaza. Um, there, I saw a lot of folks being accompanied by people of faith and also kind of just comforted after someone, was snatched or kind of accompanied during press conferences and things like that. Um, it's interesting to see that happen at the same time that we hear about this extreme rightward lurch of um, some communities of Christianity where they're talking about how empathy is bad. There's toxic empathy and how we need to have a little bit of a tighter grip on, um, I don't know, caring about other people. But Ryan, didn't you write a book about that?
A book about empathy?
No, about Christianity and why.
No,
think you're missing that.
I wrote maybe it's from a different, parallel universe, a bizarro world, Ryan Cooper. I wrote a book called How Are You Going to Pay for That? Smart
I know
Answers
you
to the
wrote that
Dumbest
one.
Question
Who
of.
wrote the Why Leftists Should Be Christians?
We
Or Why
had the guy who
Christians Should
wrote
Be
that.
Leftists?
We that is Phil Chrisman, the guy we had him on my podcast. So
Oh,
There
There
you
you
go.
go.
there it
all
is.
these white
Got
dudes,
like
y'all look alike.
Another
I do,
mystery
for real.
solved. Okay, well,
mystery solved.
Well,
yeah,
let's
as
let's
far as
try
what
to.
David, I haven't given my 2025 take yet,
Oh, okay.
and
You're giving the plot. Okay.
I'm struck by several things. First of all, uh, the falling away from Trump in the public generally has two roots. Obviously, one is economic, one is people appalled at the conduct of the Trump administration. Generally, there are obviously overlaps between those two groups, but but neither group in and of itself would lead to the 13 to 15 point swing that David mentioned earlier. It's both. B, the Republicans have been completely dormant, except that is beginning to crack now among swing district Republicans, as we're seeing. And C, and this is really, I think, one of the positives of the year. Uh, I think the Democrats generally uh, are being compelled to move left on the economy in particular. And I think that has major consequences. And I think this is also a year, if we pull back from Trump somewhat and contemplate Elon Musk, this has been a year when I think public anger at billionaires has been rising. And I think, I don't know if any of you have read the op-ed that popped up on the New York Times website today by Mitt Romney, which essentially did everything but call for a confiscatory wealth tax. I mean, he also obligatorily put in, well, we have to slash entitlements, et cetera, or means test them. But I think there really is, and repeated polls have shown public support, not just in New York City, but across the state of New York and across the country for the Mandami program of, let's say, universal child care and taxing the rich to fund it. I think these kinds of dichotomies between the glaring, absurd wealth of the Musk class and the struggles of tens of millions of Americans, just to get to the end of the month without running out of money. I think that has been a major factor of what's going on in this country this year.
Yeah.
And part of the role of the prospect is, to sort of concretize that movement with proposals and assessments and what have you. We've done that throughout 2025, and I'm sure we will be doing that, particularly as things like Democratic primaries come up in 2026.
So, I mean, I think you could sort of think of two enduring images of the year, one which happened very early and one which happened in the middle of the year. And the first would be uh, the set of oligarchs standing behind president at the inauguration, uh, and what that said about where things were aligning. And this has continued throughout the year. Trump has been essentially an errand boy to big tech, going around the world and getting them to cut regulations on tech companies, taxes on tech companies, what have you, buddying up with people like Jensen Huang of NVIDIA and selling sensitive technologies to China. Um, and it also manifests in the really only bet that America is making uh, economically in the world, which is this bet to develop AI in the United States and use all amounts of money and resources to do so. So this, as you correctly say, Harold, has generated this popular revulsion, and it leads us to the second uh, enduring image, which you allude to, which is uh, Zoran Mandami accepting both the nomination and the victory of the mayoralty, because that showed a way to fight back against this in a way that was not necessarily vindictive. It was not negative polarization. It was, here are concrete ways where we can make this city, New York City, the biggest city in America, livable for the broad majority of people, not just as a playground for the rich, which it has been for the last 15, 20 years. So I would set those two together, and I think that plays into what you were talking about. But we just got through our own issue on this subject of cost of living and affordability and all that, and it plays in with this, this bet that's been made on the economy on the AI revolution, because in order to fund it, you have to build all of these data centers all over the country, and that is putting strains on certainly on the electricity system, as well as strains on the rest of the economy to be able to have any kind of resources to develop. Maybe we'll shift to that. And James, I know you've been working on some of this stuff quite extensively, so maybe you could talk about that.
I think when it comes to affordability, more specifically, how much we are paying for electricity to keep our lights on, to heat our homes. The sort of convergence of, data center demand and this sort of other set of factors that are related to the current administration's policies toward renewable energy. Also, they need to upgrade our grid and really just, replace aging infrastructure in a way that doesn't hold up that traditional infrastructure for, extended long-lived time periods. Um, and the sort of convergence of these factors at once is really just unearthing this kind of fundamental issue where the way in which rates are calculated is something that is rooted in cost of service regulation, which is basically, utilities the Supreme Court basically says that utilities need to be able to make a fair amount of money where they can remain, cover their operating costs and function, but in a way that is just and reasonable. So as part of that, there is this capital bias in the sort of utility industry among investor-owned utilities where there is an incentive to build out infrastructure such as those long-lived assets. And as part of that, as we see it now, as all these things are really coming to a head, utility stocks are definitely way up. And, these are regulated returns that are being generated by utilities that are a part of a, state level regulatory and at times federal regulatory system as well. And I would say that there is a growing recognition, not only in New York, specifically with the public power movement and the Mamdani campaign, pushing for, revolutionary change with respect to the way in which these rates and services are calculated, provided respectively. Um, I think that really just kind of comes back to, this sort of realization that the current system is, not only unreliable, but is not providing an essential service for folks at a reasonable sort of cost where, each sort of different bracket can be able to, afford that. So I would think, that's really where the convergence of those factors is coming to. It's shining a light on sort of the regulatory capture piece of this. But, in Georgia, for example, we did see the election of two Democrat public utility commissioners who had explicitly, messaged about sort of the excessive rates that investor-owned utilities have been
And
making.
you've been reporting on that from pretty much across the country, whether you go in person or I saw that you and David had a piece out about PG&E, which is the good old, California. That's my utility when I'm back home in California. So I think that's just been really great to follow your reporting on that from the Midwest to the West Coast to East, South, all of it.
Yeah. They made an announcement yesterday,
Right.
very slightly reducing the sort of risk-free guarantee
Mm.
rate of return that these utilities will make. The other thing that's played out, at least in the back half of the year from a policy standpoint, is that Republicans have been dragged into yet again another conversation about healthcare that they don't really want to have. Whitney and Ryan, you both have been reporting on this from different perspectives, and obviously we're not going to see this end, even though we're going to hit the expiration date on December 31st, and Affordable Care Act enhanced subsidies will go away. We will go back to the pre 2021 setup of health insurance with more expensive health insurance that is going to be really burdensome for tens of millions of families. I know you've been talking to some of those families, Whitney. Maybe you can start here.
The effect of this expiration is that people are going to go without insurance. They're just going to say, I can't afford it, so I'm just not going to have it. And then if there is a crisis in their life where they need medical care, they're either going to go to a minute clinic and get kind of Band-Aid like care for whatever their injury or illness is, or they're going to go straight to the emergency room when things come to a head and they're in such a catastrophe that they are at risk of losing their life. And there is a pretty concerted effort to pretend like this condition is not going to affect children. There's at least one study out there that says that children will be the least affected of all of the age groups. And then there are a number of Republican lawmakers who have said that people under the age of 50 don't really need comprehensive insurance. All of that is a lie. Kids are going to be hurt the most of all because you need to have um, preventative medicine as a kid for certain childhood illnesses. You need to have vaccines so you don't
No,
uh,
no vaccines. You
so
don't
you
need
don't,
those.
fall ill with a preventable disease that causes lifelong implications. And then the component that I don't think enough people are talking about that I think is so severe and has such it just would cast a long shadow over people's lives is that if a family can't afford healthcare and their kid gets sick, they have to go to the emergency room, and that illness is something that could have been resolved with some medicine or earlier care. The hospital might call Child Protective Services and take that kid away. And there is plenty of research about how the population of people in foster care are some of the folks with the highest rates of illnesses and chronic illnesses specifically. Um, and going through that system affects kids throughout the rest of their life. Um, so the consequence for a child is goes so far beyond just having an illness that's not resolved. It really can change their whole life and take their family away from them.
Right.
Other folks
Uh,
are talking about how, they have to take second jobs to pay for their premiums that are going to go up. And some folks are saying we're just going to reduce the coverage that we have and hope for the best. All of this means that people are going to die because of GOP policies. And I think that because there is no resolution here on December 19th for extending those subsidies, like people are really going to suffer and die before this issue gets fixed. And it is a stain on our country.
yeah.
I I also think, just briefly, David, I also think a
Mhm.
lot about the kind of strain that our emergency medical system is already under. Like ERs are already, as anyone who has had to go to an ER
Jammed.
recently knows, ERs are jam-packed, and a lot of people already cannot afford consistent primary care and sometimes just have to go to the ER for things that could be covered by a primary care doctor because ERs
Right.
can't turn you away for lack of insurance.
Right.
Um, and, I just, if this gets much worse, which, as Whitney said, it looks like it's going to, the consequences are going to affect everyone who is involved in the medical system. Because if you have to go to the ER and you do have insurance, it's going to be busier. Doctors are going to be burnt out. EMTs and paramedics are going to be burnt out. Hospitals are going to close. Things are going to get scary. So that's something I'm hoping to track more in 2026.
Well, it is
And
going to
to your
get
point,
worse
Emma, the
because,
hospitals are already closing.
yeah,
So, because of the One Big Beautiful Bill Act,
that's where I
hospitals
was going to
across
go.
the country have been closing even before that was passed because hospitals have to plan for their budget so far in advance that when they see funding being cut coming down the pike at them, they can make some choices about, well, we have to cut this many staff, or we have to cut services. We have to just close our entire pediatric wing because it's not a part of our services that turn a profit. Um, so that's already happening. And like you said, Emma, it's just going to get much worse. The
And
pain you're
we're
going to
gonna get
feel
as we
really.
get closer to that implementation,
Mhm.
we're going to see more of those effects on hospitals, both rural hospitals and also hospitals that are high capacity hospitals for vulnerable populations. Ryan, you and I both looked at the bill that was really the only legislative output of the Republican majority in Congress, and maybe the only thing they pass in the entire second Trump term, because he doesn't seem very interested in doing much else with that majority to the extent that he'll continue to have it. You know, what are the highlights, the things that we need to know about that bill, which we covered pretty extensively, and what's it going to mean for people?
Well, we've been talking just now about the something which is related to, but not in that bill, which is the failure to extend the Biden era Obamacare subsidies. And that's going to kick something like 5 million people off their coverage, going to cause premiums to go up by more than 100%. I mean, the principal part of the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, off the dome, is you have massive cuts to Medicaid, like $1 trillion in cuts
Mhm.
to Medicaid, which is mainly through like penny ante bureaucratic hoops to jump through. The CBO, the Congressional Budget Office, expects, I think almost certainly correctly, will cause people to be disenrolled from the program. I mean, you have massive cuts to food stamps. And all this is so that you can preserve the Trump tax cuts for the rich back from 2017. Um, and
Right.
yeah, I think, that the Medicaid cuts, that's another 10 million people or something going to lose their health insurance. And I guess, aside from all the horrible, disastrous effects on the people who are losing their coverage or dialing it back because it's becoming more expensive, or the hospitals that are going to close because they have to cover so many uninsured patients who can't pay for the, complicated care that they need that they could have treated, but now they have, stage 4 cancer that they didn't catch, whatever it is. Um, it's that politically, this is pretty unusual space for Republicans. Republicans have finally caught the car on their healthcare ideology. They've been trying to do this ever since Medicare and Medicaid was passed in the 60s. They hate programs to give benefits to anyone except the rich. And maybe, like this sort of enfranchised, largely white upper middle class. They hated, Medicare. This is where Ronald Reagan got his political start, railing that Medicare was going to turn America into a totalitarian dystopia. Um, they hate Medicaid. They hated Obamacare when it passed in 2010. When Republicans took the House, I think they voted after 2010, they voted like 50 times to repeal it over and over again. They almost repealed it in 2017. It failed by one vote in the Senate. And now they haven't repealed it formally, but they have taken a big old bite out of it. And they've taken a huge bite out of Medicaid. And so this is be the first time since the 60s that Americans have actually gotten a taste of what Republican policy is on healthcare, which is to take your insurance and give it to Elon Musk.
Yeah,
And yeah, we'll
100%
see.
agree with that.
And this is something that the Democrats have, you know, made an issue of, but not nearly enough. Now, one would hope, starting January 1st, when all of those people you just enumerated, Ryan, get knocked off, health insurance, that this would be a major theme. A friend of mine who is a pretty damn good Democratic pollster, has been suggesting that this would be a good issue for groups of mothers to, raise this issue politically in response, in particular to what Whitney was just saying about, what this does to millions of American children. Uh,
I'm going to bring up kind of a complication. And Bharat Ramamurthy, who was a leader at the National Economic Council under Biden, he was also chief policy advisor to Elizabeth Warren, has brought this up. So if you think about the future, and we're going to, move to the future here in our discussion, um, we have seen this time and again where Republicans engineer massive tax cuts and Democrats say, well, we can only roll back those tax cuts for the wealthy. We can only roll those back those tax cuts above $400,000. And in this case, they paired them with these spending cuts that every Democrat wants to roll back. So you imagine a Democrat in control in 2028. If they want their agenda to be we are going to roll back all of the Trump cuts from the big beautiful bill, but we are also not going to burden anyone making less than $400,000 a year with more taxes. Then we've created a multi-trillion-dollar gap uh, in what we can actually provide, and that's before we get to any positive. This is just rolling back what happened. This is not any kind of new policy that gets put in, and it's a function of the Bush tax cuts uh, uh, cut trillions of dollars in taxes, and we roll a portion of them back, and then the Trump tax cuts cut trillions of dollars. And I thought we had solved this because all we have to do is go back to the Obama tax plan, but no. What did we end up getting in the Inflation Reduction Act? Some very small changes to taxes because Manchin and Sinema didn't like anything else. And this one-way ratchet where we keep cutting this tax burden on the vast majority of people and hope that we can find some taxes on millionaires that you can get past the gauntlet of the Senate. It's breaking down. It's creating this critical problem. Uh, and the question is, do Democrats need to forsake this pledge that they've made to only tax the rich with respect to what's been already passed because they're putting themselves into such a corner through that process.
Well, I have a math question here, and that is that so much income and wealth has been redistributed upward that, whereas in the past, to do what you were just talking about, David, yeah, you would have to raise taxes on people who made, say, 300,000, not just cut it off above them by having a 400,000 threshold. But there is so much wealth that has accumulated at the top now. I don't know.
Yeah, the
I
math
don't know
still
what.
doesn't math,
Yeah.
is the answer to that question. It doesn't get you to the point that you need to be at to, especially if you want to not just roll back what was done in the Trump bill, but have a positive agenda. I mean, this becomes a major problem, and you can always say, okay, well, we'll just not pay for it. How are you going to pay for that? This is the burden that Ryan was talking about in his book. But the the structural gap that is created by the Trump regime has created a pretty severe problem with respect to uh, uh, deficits moving forward. So I don't know what we're going to do about that, but it's a problem for the next presidency. I want to go around in the few moments we have left, and I'm going to start with Emma because she has to go early. And tell me about, from your reporter's lens, just in a couple minutes, what you really want to see, what you're really interested in focusing on in the years ahead.
Yeah, I think we already kind of got into it earlier in this conversation when Whitney and I were sort of bouncing back and forth talking about the changes to healthcare. I think a lot of these policies that have been enacted, cuts to Medicaid, cuts to SNAP, the expiration of the subsidies, some changes, of course, will be immediate, and especially when there's a lot of policy confusion, as we saw with SNAP earlier this year, when it was sort of turned off during the shutdown and then back on, and just, sometimes you feel these things immediately. Other times, these policies take longer to come into implementation, hospitals don't all immediately close, etc. So I'm thinking a lot about these kind of slower, more delayed changes, especially in the realm of poverty. So I will definitely be continuing to think about all different facets of the healthcare system, as I was saying earlier, not just ERs, primary care, doctors, etc. I want to keep following changes to SNAP, which is something I've done a lot this year,
Mhm.
and just being attentive to the long-term impacts and effects of this, this presidency. I also briefly wanted to plug that Whitney Naomi, who couldn't be here, but she's one of the other writing fellows, and I
Yeah.
are trying to um, just talk to folks who have experience with the foster care system. As Whitney was sort of mentioning earlier, foster children often are overlooked, um, but face some of the biggest challenges when the social safety net is cut in any way. So I'm going to drop a link that hopefully our amazing administrator can put in the YouTube chat.
Yeah,
If you
great.
have experience and want to share it, please do.
Excellent. Whitney, what are you looking at in 2026?
I am looking at how people are making ends meet in these conditions that we're in, what folks are doing to stay afloat, how they are working all the time, where they're finding those jobs in an environment where, you know, companies are doing mass layoffs, and basically just trying to highlight how folks are affected by these policy changes. I'm
Okay.
also really curious about the Securities and Exchange Commission's ongoing deregulation. So I'll be watching that. And there's so much news just happening every day that I'm sure my answer will be different in about 30 minutes. Um, but that's where my head is at right now.
Okay. Thank you. Ryan, what do you want to check out in 26? What's interesting you?
Well, I'm going to be watching Donald Trump's health quite closely.
Okay.
There's
At least someone is.
some trends there, and I just want to be well apprised of what they are and how they're going. I think, on a more positive note, maybe, aside from all this, the fallout for all the horrible policy that Republicans have passed, I'm um, very interested in the green transition that's happening, by and large outside of the rich world. We're seeing a basically industrial revolution scale of economic transition going on from fossil fuel power to renewables and batteries. It's centered in China, but it's also getting major liftoff in South Asia, Pakistan, and Africa. Crash deployment of solar panels. They've just gotten so cheap. America has fallen way behind. Even Europe, however, is also not doing all that great. They've really kind of slowed down with their transition and their own economic difficulties. And I'm just very interested to see how that plays out, because it's kind of, the most important story above all the other ones in the background of everything all over the world.
Great. Thank you. James, what's your reporting eye poised to look at in 26?
Well, frankly, I think energy is the story of our time, and I think especially just during the second half of this year and the election in Georgia, for example, with the Public Utilities Commission race, I just think overall, like there are a number of different political movements and campaigns and candidates specifically that are all sort of connecting around not only the issue of affordability, but really targeting some of these I would say, sort of economic outcomes that, on their face are sort of presented as being natural, like, outcomes of, different sorts of, economies and other factors. But I would say that, there is a growing recognition that a lot of this, or, if not all of it, is not natural at all, and it's hurting working people. And there is just a growing recognition, especially now in the utility sort of energy industry more broadly. I think more so focused on, the rate making process and cost of service regulation that really is taking that, prevailing utility paradigm and turning it on its head. Obviously, different sorts of groups and, folks in different states really sort of imagining what that is going to look like for their own communities. But I would just say, my other sort of areas of interest, things that I've been following, definitely come back to, the insurance industry, specifically homeowners insurance in different states, sort of the way in which, the regulatory frameworks in those states and market incentives are sort of distorting positive outcomes for consumers. And beyond that, I think, just given that the NLRB has been, pretty much in limbo for, almost the past year or so, there is the role now growing among that states are a responsibility that they're really starting to recognize of protecting workers and creating safeguards that are not currently sort of present with a functioning NLRB. So I would say those are sort of broadly the stories that I'm looking at this year.
Okay. And Harold, finally.
Well,
Yep. Okay, Emma has to go.
okay,
Thanks.
Emma.
Thank you,
Bye,
Emma.
everyone.
All right.
Thanks.
Okay. I'm going to be looking at the efforts of liberal states and progressive cities to end run right-wing federal policy on things like setting wage standards for workers not covered under the NLRA, like Uber and Lyft drivers, getting around, ballot measures to have a 1-year wealth tax in California, or a ballot measure in Montana to circumvent Citizens United, all kinds of ways in addition to, the sanctuary city semi-option in which cities and states are going to try to circumvent the either, a hostile federal government or the collapse of federal power where previously it protected actual people. That and just the internal stuff in the Democratic Party as it slowly drifts into a more populist, progressive populist direction, but there's pushback, of course, and so that should keep me busy in 2026.
Well, I'll just add two things quick. Nobody mentioned the midterm elections,
Well, that's sort of
which
what I
are
meant by the
obviously
Democratic. Yeah,
oh,
yeah, that,
sure, but
yeah.
whether or not we will see the Republican majority punctured in this country, particularly in the House, where we have these ongoing redistricting battles that are an attempt to consolidate power for the long run. So that's one thing, and the second I would say is continuing to monitor the financial underpinnings of the AI build out. I've written quite a bit about the shaky foundations of AI in terms of the various loans that are being engineered to fund data center infrastructure and things of that nature. So I think that is a big emerging story that we will see play out in the weeks and months and years to come. We are about out of time. This went so fast. And I want to reiterate, first of all, thank you to everybody who showed up and everybody on the Prospect staff who, for the last 2 years, has indulged me by talking for an hour about their stories and made this, I think, a really great weekly conversation. We are always looking to innovate, think of new ideas, new ways to get people involved with the Prospect and be where they are, whether you want to listen to read or watch news and information, stories about ideas, politics, and power. We will bring it to you. We went, I think, as far as we wanted to go with this format, but there will be other formats and there will be other ways that we will bring you that information. So continue, I would say, to subscribe, follow our YouTube. This video will obviously be online all weekend, but our YouTube channel will still be active, and you can still come to prospect.org and see the latest of everything that we're doing, whether it's podcasts, whether it's features, our print magazine. If you want to have things written on paper and sent to you, we'll do that for you too. Our newsletters, all of that. We can't do it without your support, and we're in the middle of a pledge drive right now. So obviously the end of the year, it's prospect.org/donate. You can check out what we have to offer you, and I promise, because we've been working on stuff for the new year, it's going to be a great 2026, and we have a lot of things planned. And we're really excited about that. So we are out of time. Thank you for being here. Whitney Wimbish, staff writer, Ryan Cooper, senior editor, James Barata, and the only recently offline Emma Jansen, writing fellows, and Harold Meyerson, editor at large. Thank you all for being here. Thank you for being here for the last 2 years. So long but not goodbye, and have a great